we had this conversation about like the what ifs of the band. And it wasn't like, let's do it. It was like, can you imagine?
When we started the band, it was just friends getting together, talking about life and the things that we could create together.
When I started to hear Emily's voice on things, it was like the first time that my brain would accept it as a Linkin Park song.
I mean, this could work.
And then all of a sudden we're here and it's very real and it's really big.
For more than a decade, Linkin Park gave us songs of resilience and empathy, reaching millions of people, building one of music's most faithful fan bases. But as they were reaching us, one of their own, the brilliant Chester Bennington slipped out of reach in 2017. Fans rallied around the band as they said goodbye, unsure if we'd ever get a chance to see them again. But here we are, 7 years on, Linkin Park are officially back with a new singer and drummer, and new music ready to reach us once more. Today is a celebration, a chance to build on the incredible legacy of Chester, of Linkin Park, and the magical healing power of music.
Look at this place, bro. I don't know what I was expecting when I was coming here today. I got goosebumps because I'm like, what stage is this?
So we've got a launch stage, and then this is the arena stage.
This is the arena stage.
Yeah. And then there'll be a bigger stage.
There's no underplay here, Mike. There's no underplay.
No.
You're all in.
We're committed, yeah.
That's why we're here. We're here to talk about commitment.
Yeah, man.
Right? We're here to talk about Linkin Park. Oh, man. I can't tell you how happy I am to see you and to be able to do that. Can I go on the stage, though? Can we go
Let's do it, man. Let's go.
Stage?
Yeah, come on up this way. You know, the live show has always been such an important part of who we are. With a lot of years behind us,
Yeah.
we've done a lot of things. So we had to do something we hadn't done.
What,
And
like
so,
in the round?
yeah.
Your first show
Yeah.
with new members is in the round. I don't think anyone needs me to explain why that's kind of psycho.
It's very, actually, what's funny is, I think in the round is easier for solo artists.
Right.
Because they're just that single point of interest moving around.
Ed Sheeran's having a great time.
And then as we were designing and building whatever, like we went, oh wow, it's really different for a band to do this. Like music culture is so solo artist, small group oriented that it's 6 people on stage.
Where do I look? What am I doing here? And also
different.
This is you.
That's me, yeah.
But this is Colin.
Okay, yes. So Colin facing that way, Joe facing that way, I'm facing this way. And when we can, we're gonna do like halftime at the basketball game, we're gonna switch sides.
Love it.
So
I love it. I love
and
it.
everybody else has stations, but they can move around.
So let's just talk about the scale of this for a second, because
I don't know if it looks bigger or smaller on camera, but it feels big to me.
Yeah, no, it doesn't just feel big, it is genuinely big. Like, we're in a huge soundstage here. You're taking up every inch of it. Your whole crew is here. I mean, look over there, you got people who you've worked with from the start, right? I mean, this has not just been about giving the band an opportunity to continue and to make new music and to move forward, but also it's a reunion.
Yeah, some of the folks that we're working with across the board, like, have been with us since the beginning, like first tour, first cycle, album cycle, and other people are brand new, right? Like, and to have all of those different points of view, all of that diversity of types of people and ways of thinking is like, I don't know if we could do it without that. Like, we need all of it. And we thrive on having that family around us. I think that's part of who we are.
You know, it's funny, family old and new, like you say, bring different perspectives, but there's just an inbuilt emotional resonance with people who have watched you grow up doing what you love, and they've been doing what they love, and you shared in it together, that I'm sure has created some emotional moments for people who wondered in the last 7 or so years whether you would ever get a chance to spend time together again like this.
Yeah. We felt like 7 years ago, we were launching a record, we were just getting started with that, and everything came to a halt. And it felt like it got taken away. Like it felt like we had a thing that we were really happy with and proud of, and it was gone. And one of the things that happened that a lot of people don't think about is that the people off stage had that feeling. Like there was hundreds of people from the tour to management to the label, lots of people there, and so on. And there was a part of us, like over the last 7 years, where we did remember that we have I don't want to say it's like a responsibility because it's not all that serious, but there is a benefit to, like, if we get this thing up and running and we do it well, like then everybody gets to play a role. Like everybody gets to jump back in their seat on the Millennium Falcon and shoot the back. Like, you know what I'm saying?
I do totally. And I think it is a responsibility, but not just on you. That's the difference. I think everybody wants that responsibility back of playing a role in something that makes a lot of people happy and ultimately leaves something that is lasting. That is what you do. And your peers and friends do through the ages, is you create art and it will last long after we're gone, and you create memories that will stay with us as long as we're here.
I mean, that's our hope. That's our goal, right?
All right, I mean, we're gonna get into kind of how this is all unfolded when we get to sit down and pretty soon, and also I get to actually spend some time with Colin and Emily, which is gonna be exciting.
I'm excited for you to do that,
And also see Brad again, see Joe again. I saw him in the hallway 10 years, probably because I've seen you and Dave.
Oh,
and
wow, yeah.
Rob's not here.
That's right.
Probably a good time for us while we buy the drum kit to sort of, for the fans to kind of elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, Rob, we had a conversation a little while ago. I want to say it's like a couple years ago at this point, where he said he wanted to step away. We didn't talk about that in public because we didn't really know how that was going to work out. The fans noticed it. I mean, they've seen that, like, we put out, as you know, we did paper cuts. We released a bunch of things. We celebrated Hybrid Theory, and he wasn't part of any of the, interviews or marketing or whatever. And that's why, we'll always love the guy. We'll always respect, like, the wonderful things we built together. And with his absence being a real thing, I was already working with Colin, and Colin I didn't even think of Colin as a drummer.
Because he's a record producer, really.
He writes, he produces, he does everything. He plays guitar really well, he plays piano well, but his main instrument is drums.
And it clicked.
Yeah, it did.
And it feels like, in many respects, that's the reason we're here, is that, I don't know how to put it. When I spoke to you on the phone the other day before we met here today with all the cameras and everybody here, it didn't sound like you had any of this, felt like you were trying, and I know you did, and put a lot of hard work and effort and love into this, but it felt to me like the way you were describing it, like it was as organic as it could be.
That's how it felt to me. Like, we didn't say, hey, let's get the band started again. We didn't say, let's do tryouts. Let's find somebody for whatever. It was even suggested to us at one point, like, hey, you guys could do like a competition show on TV, and like have all these, you'd have the best singers, and like you pick the best ones.
Oh my God.
Right. And anything you can imagine, any crazy idea that a person comes up with that's like, oh, you could have done it this way, that came to us. Like, they all came.
I'm not trying to say there's any such thing as a bad idea, but that's tough to acknowledge, the idea that in the midst of trying to figure out how you reappear for yourselves in a way that's authentic, so that the fans, so that we embrace it because it's authentic, to do that through the filter of entertainment would have been, I think, nearly impossible.
I think that bands are more and more rare these days. And so maybe it escapes a lot of people that, like, one of the fundamentals of a band is that there's a bunch of people, like, who are sharing everything, all the creative space and the touring and these decisions and stuff. And you got to spend a lot of time together, and you're sharing all of that stuff in a more intense way than you would be if you were a smaller group or if you're a solo artist. So for us, talent just gets you in the door. Like, talent, we expect that if somebody's going to come in and we're going to do a little writing session,
you can play.
Of course they got to be able to do that. It's not about that. It's on top of that, what's the vibe in the room? Like, what's the dynamic between the people in the band and the conversations we have that aren't related to the music. Like, what kind of people? Are they good people? Right? Like all that stuff becomes so important. So for us, the idea of like tryouts or the idea of finding somebody through a talent.
It's too rigid.
It's not about the talent.
Yeah.
It's about the person.
Yeah, exactly. And then by the way, you're on the hook because everyone voted for them or whatever. They all want them to be in the band, then you go on tour and it's like, oh my gosh, we could not be more incompatible, right? And we're stuck, you know, you're stuck with that. Stakes are even higher because you had this, whether you wanted it or not, this time, each of you away. Yeah. And I know the friendship remained and you had reasons to reconnect. You were very kind to us all in terms of reconnecting with the music, re-releasing things, keeping the Linkin Park experience alive. But you were figuring it out on your own. I mean, Post-Traumatic is a powerful body of work, and we never really got to talk about that. I mean, you could have just made Place to Start.
Right, just put out a song.
And just that.
Yeah.
Because it says everything in that one moment of like, feeling guilty for just wanting to continue doing something that you love that you now have no control over. And I wanted to ask you before we sit down.
I forgot about all that in the song. You literally, I mean, you said a bunch of stuff like, oh yeah, that's right.
Oh, it's very powerful. It's very powerful. And yeah, well, probably a good thing. But before we sit down and start really focusing on the future, can you sort of trace back that we're here today because of that? Like that's kind of where your journey started.
There's a really good, you make a great point in that like sometimes as an artist, like over the years, I or we will like put out music and then disappear and do a bunch of creative work and then pop back up. And there's a whole like narrative that people kind of missed in between that got you there. And sometimes it's really, that means that thing that you came back with is very dramatically different and weird and people are like confused or uncomfortable. My journey through this was a little more of the opposite, where I was very upfront about how I was doing and what was happening in my head. And I put out a record called Post-Traumatic, as you said, a bunch of songs. I did a whole tour to kind of commune with the fans and give them a place to come and say like, this has affected me, like this, what's gonna happen? And the answer was, we don't know. Like nobody knows.
Well, because that album was just full of questions. And I'm sure everybody in the band was asking the same questions in their own way. And
certainly,
just, like, what is life now? Like what's wide open for us? I don't know if you can honestly ask yourself now, looking back on it, if you imagine that this machine would be standing under it and within it again like this, like.
It was actually at some points it was so scary.
Yeah.
Like to even to commit to it, to imagine it and get your hopes up about it.
Right, like so you have to measure your hopes.
Wow. Oh man, like it was so hard to like say, yeah, we're gonna do it again. Like it's enough things are starting to come together and work out that it feels like it might.
The architecture could be scary, because you're in a safe place just creating. And by the way, how the fuck did you keep it such a good secret? That's insane. I kind of want to know.
I can't wait for you to hear some of the other stories from the other folks in the band about that.
You know what? Neither can I. Let's go over there now. Let's go over there now.
Yeah.
It's great to meet you. Congrats.
Great to meet you.
Great to meet you.
You too.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Congrats on all of you for being here. It's lovely to see you, old friends in the.
I feel like we've literally known you since we started our whole career.
Pretty much. I mean,
and I don't know if I could say that about anybody else.
Yeah.
I mean, there are other humans that we know, but I'm saying
I can't think of any.
in this capacity.
Yeah.
You're him.
Yeah, we're still here. It's a blessing, and I don't take it for granted. And what year did One Step Closer come out? When did it come out?
God,
what was it?
2000?
2000. So yeah, we're getting up to 25 years. We've known each other.
Was that right? 2000? Oh my God.
You had purple hair? And
at
UK
one point
run?
I probably did, but I started with red.
You remember the original
red.
purple?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Man, you were kids.
Yeah.
You were kids and it was happening very, very fast. I felt like it became this really quickly, like this kind of scale really quickly. Coming back to this, having had this space between what Linkin Park ultimately became, right? The scale of it, the size of it, Brad, and then coming back to it. This isn't an underplay stage.
I was telling Emily, like, I just feel so relieved because there's probably like 300 road cases stacked up on the side of this huge soundstage over there. And you wouldn't believe how much space they were taking up in my garage.
That was your job? Your job was to hold all the flight cases? That was your straw? That's hilarious.
You had one job.
We were just trying to, we needed to just save money on storage.
Flight case joke aside, did it surprise anybody in the band when you first walked in here that this was kind of where you left off? This is what you do. You work under in these huge environments and prepare to play big shows with massive screens and massive stages, you know?
It surprised me. I mean, when I walked in, this was on paper, like we were still working out, I felt like we were still working out the shape of everything a week before, and then all of a sudden we're here and it's very real and it's really big. It's almost like feeling of like, oh, this is what I committed to, this is what I signed up for.
Yeah.
And it's like, it made me a little nervous.
Well, you probably, you're sort of a frog in a pot of boiling water when it's all happening over 10, 20 years and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and then that's just your gig.
Yes.
That's what it is. And then it's like, no, it's not that anymore. How long, obviously putting aside the emotional changes that had to occur and what you had to go through as people, how long did it take you, Dave, to kind of pump the brakes on this? So 7 years ago, and realize that this may not be a part of your life again, and that's okay.
For me, I've always had music as a part of my life, starting when I was 5, 6 years old, and it's never been a focal point of like, this needs to be my career or this needs to be anything else other than, for me, what has been an incredible outlet.
Yeah.
And even, looking back 7 years ago, I just had the feeling of, I'm gonna keep doing music in some way or another, whether that means, which is even what I was doing, playing with my kids at home. I'm gonna keep doing that.
Yeah.
But there's no promises that, we'll do Linkin Park again. There's no promises that it'll be at any level or anything other than that. And oddly for me, that felt okay.
Yeah.
And at the same time, a couple of years ago when Mike, Joe, and I started talking about like, are we gonna do Linkin Park again? Is that a thing? There was a real excitement from that early stage of like, well, let's just get together, hang out. Let's start talking together about maybe doing that. Let's see what comes of it. And gradually like that grows to here. And so to your question a second ago, when we got in this room, the first day we were rehearsing in this space, the first like 20 minutes for me were just kind of a mix of anxiety and panic and oh boy, this is now like a significant step on that process or on that journey. This is real. Like there's no more like, maybe it's
It's almost like there's two of you, It's like, well, I've kind of got this other life going on now, and then I've got to remind myself who I am when I'm in this band, and when we get to do it at the scale, which is, it's the dream. It's what everyone aspires to, when you start out. I mean, look, you set your own goals in life, but you want to reach as many people as you can. You want to have as much excitement and fun as you can, and you'll have more. And so as we meet you, Emily, someone who's dedicated your life to music, with Dead Sarah, achieved things, made great music, played shows, done all the things you wanted to do as a young person starting out on this, and then it's like, boom, welcome to Burbank.
Perfect.
Right, welcome to sunny Burbank,
Burbank.
the only place where you can build a place this big to store an arena stage just for fun, right?
Exactly.
How has that, before we even get into making music and the chemistry of how you got here, just staying in the moment, what were your first impressions when you sort of walked in here and you were like, all right, this is my stage now?
Yeah, I was like, whatever, cool. I mean, it's been, this past year, just like little by little, being able to like process a little bit of it day by day.
Yeah.
And also like, we got to see pictures of the stage and everything and how it was being built, but it was like, that first day coming on the stage, I was like, oh my God.
Everything is so neat. Look how everything is
Everything's so
perfectly
professional.
wound and wrapped up. There's not one wire
I'm not
out of
going to get
place.
That
electrocuted.
was actually me.
Yes.
It was a shit show in here.
Yeah.
And I came in one night, late at night, just OCD'd the heck out of this place.
Yeah.
No one even acknowledged it, but
Well,
Well,
I
now
feel
he
like
is,
I'm
he
getting
is.
my proper.
Yeah.
we can acknowledge it now,
Yeah.
and also listen. Not everybody needs to be patted on the back for doing what is inherently their job just by nature. You were built this way. Get out of your own way. Be the tidier. It's who you are. Accept it. Embrace
If
it.
you need a cord tidied, I'm your guy.
So I've got to get past this now. I've got to get past how it feels just to be here with you in this room. It's taken me a while because it was emotional for me as well as a lifelong fan and friend to know that this was even happening. We were going to be able to talk. And I'm really grateful that you've taken the opportunity to talk with me and with all of us, and you chose us to have a conversation with. So thank you. Let's get into how this group of people started to form and what steps needed to be taken for Colin and for Emily and for all of you now to be able to sit here today and say to fans, we're Linkin Park, we're not another name. This isn't in honor of playing shows because we want to go out and play shows, which some people reunite just to play shows. It feels real. There's an album. You've announced an album.
We made some music.
So let's talk about how we got here.
For me, I've been doing lots of stuff. Like, I did the post-traumatic record, I did some singles, I was working with a bunch of different artists, like writing, producing, and there was one moment a few years ago, a specific moment where it was the end of summer, and I remember getting on the phone with Joe, and Joe was like, I really want to get back together as friends. Like, I feel like we haven't been hanging out, and we haven't seen each other as much as I'd like, and like, what are you doing? Let's go get breakfast or something. And when we sat down at this like a little brunch spot, we had this conversation about like the what ifs of the band. And it wasn't like, let's do it. It was like, can you imagine? There was a million questions, right? And everything was unanswered. So it was kind of like, we went through this weird little like idea or list of it. And at one point I was like, well, what if we do it and we're really happy with it, but nobody else really likes it?
Great question, by the way. Powerful question.
My feeling was, well, I won't say my feeling because Joe's answer was, oh, I'd totally still do it. And he was so decisive, like it was so real. And I felt the same way. And that was, for me personally, that was
But did you feel the same way before Joe unlocked that in you? Because I can also understand why you asked the question, because those expectations, you got to acknowledge that they're there, even just to get past them. Otherwise, you're in denial.
Yeah,
right?
it's almost like an unspoken goal or hope or whatever. And you're right. Like, I feel like I'm not 100% sure if I felt it the way he felt it.
Yeah.
But when he said it, it was like a real.
Joe, had you considered
connection.
that question, even just privately in your mind? Like, if we had a chance to do this again, would I be happy just doing it to my own satisfaction without the pressure of it being a Linkin Park that everybody else wants it to be? Or did it surprise you, your own answer to that question?
Yeah, for sure it was a thought at different moments in time. I would think about that and probably have a different answer at different times depending on how I'm feeling. And I think it comes down to when we started the band. It was just friends getting together and just like, oh, that's cool. Like, not just making the music or thinking about playing live, but us talking about life and the things that we like and the things that we could create together. Whenever conversations steer towards that type of enjoyment, then it gets to a pure place of creation and freedom. And that's really what I miss from everything. And I think as we became successful, some of that would get lost sometimes. But whenever we get back to the core, even making this record, we just get together and sometimes 6 hours goes by. We're not making any music, we're just hanging out. And that's what it's about. And there might be like something that comes up from a conversation that's the genesis of the ideas. Oh, let's write about that. Okay, or like, oh, this is a rhythm, a sound that I'm thinking of. And that's what I missed. And like just seeing the seed of that type of idea, what it can turn into, ultimately playing live and
all of
sharing
this,
that with people.
Yeah, that works itself out later.
It extends outside of us too. Like if you talk to anyone that's here, it's a job, but they're doing everything they can because they're invested in the joy of what brought them to this space too, and how they can help us to make something great, and they have ownership of that, and we draw a lot of power from that as well.
It's given me a lot to think about, in particular when you talk about like the idea of feeling like you can go back to the beginning. And I think the album title reflects that very cleverly, you know, because any real Linkin Park fan knows that you're originally called Zero with an X, which is pretty sick, by the way. I mean, in terms of like discarded band names, it's kind of up there. You know what I mean? It's been a lot worse. It feels like you're feeling that the whole process, not just the beginning of the album and answering those questions, but you wanted to hold on to that sense of like how we felt at the start. If we can't be those kids anymore, can we recapture that feeling?
Yeah, one of the reasons for the album title, I mean, it's obviously a double entendre about blank canvases and also about our band in particular. And we felt like we have a new energy, like it's almost like going back in time and going to the start and starting again, except you have the benefit of all the stuff you know.
Yeah.
We know what we've been through, Emily knows what she's been through, Colin knows what and everybody brought those things to the table. One of the things I really enjoyed is they're from a younger generation than me, so some of the stuff that they were bringing to the table was refreshing. It was just a different point of view that I wouldn't have had. And as we were writing stuff, it was a lot of that, and also a lot of just their own like specific individual way of doing things and creative process. They're great in the studio, they're fun to hang out with.
Yeah, you set up on stage how important that is that you've got people that you want to spend time with and that you want to support personally, not just creatively, right? How important that is. So how did you start to work together? Because obviously whoever's idea it was to hold a mainstream television competition to try and get a new lead singer, that didn't land. So I'm only guessing it was the opposite of that it was like pretty much. Let's just be very granular here. What's the first phone? Well, what's the first phone? Because Colin came first.
So we were talking, Dave and Joe and I were talking, but Colin and I had started, when did we meet? 21-ish?
Yeah.
About 21-ish? Right. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I was doing some sessions with some other artists.
Yeah.
That has been what Colin was doing.
Yeah.
And we did a session together. I walked out of that session being like, dude, that guy is insane. Like he and I have like a thing, like I feel like we think similarly or something. And so we set up some more sessions.
Yeah, and actually the only reason I did that session was to work with Mike, actually. And so I was just excited. I was like kind of whatever on the actual...
Is it the first time you said that?
No, I think
He told me that way later, though. I didn't know that for a really long time.
Yeah, that's a weird intro to a session. Be like, hey, Mike, nice to meet you. The only reason I'm here today is just because I want to work with you.
There's something kind of cool about that, too, though. Just put all your cards on the table.
He played it very cool.
We wound up working together for a long time, I feel like. Over a year, probably, just periodically, a couple times a month, probably, on other sessions and songwriting. And it was always fun. There's always so much to learn from Mike, and I think that your creative process is something that I've always really admired, and from the time Linkin Park music was what got me into production to start with. I've already told these guys this isn't new information. I used to be in my dad's house, who's a musician, and he had a bunch of music gear, and I would try to recreate the faint sample. And
it's one thing to go into a studio and get to work with someone who inspired you to want to create music yourself. It's another thing to realize that actually now you've fallen into sessions that actually might be something else, that might actually be a Linkin Park thing. I guess what I'm trying to achieve for all of us here, myself included, and the fans, is when does it actually start to feel, in particular to Emily and to Colin, like is this Linkin Park we're doing? Is that what we're doing? Have I gone from working with Mike to now Dave's here and Joe's here and Brad's here and now everyone's what's going on? Do you know what I mean?
I do.
To give a look a little bit behind the curtain, here we're sitting in this and it's this, but there's so many little steps along the way that we were literally starting from zero. It sounds cheesy to say it in that manner, but there was no roadmap, and we don't have a direction at that point of what we're trying to land at. It was, at least in my head, it was as sincere as, let's get together and just see if we even like what we're doing. Truth be told, there's a lot of times when, I'd drive up to Mike's and we'd hang out in the studio and we'd just talk for 6 hours. And that's funny too, because in retrospect, like, my kids don't realize or understand why all these guys know what's going on in their lives. And I'm like, it's because we hang out all the time and we talk, and we're not just sitting there playing instruments or whatever.
Right.
Like, you've got to like live together and feel it out. So when I first met Colin, there was no part of it of this is where Linkin Park goes. It was strictly like, let's just make some stuff and see what happens. Let's meet, let's hang out, let's do whatever. Same with Emily. We've known Emily for a bunch of years, but it was always this long process of like, we don't know what we're doing, but let's just hang out and make some stuff and see what happens.
Okay, so
and then from their side, who knows?
But
right?
let's talk about the who knows.
You'll never know.
Wow, that's very sage.
Like,
that's very
telling you.
sage and very meditative, and years of being in the music business will hopefully teach you how to do that. That being said, let's talk about hopes, because you're in control of your hopes, because you have to be, right? You can't get your hopes up too high. You just want your friendship back. You want the experience of being together. But we got to acknowledge that there are hopes here. We spend time in a room with people making music, Emily, starting to like sing on some stuff, write some stuff, figure some stuff out. Where are your hopes at this point?
It's a good question. We started writing actually in 2019. We did a couple songs, and it was just, everything was a question mark. It was just fun to go in and write some stuff. And then of course the pandemic happened, and it wasn't until a couple of years later, a few years later, you called me. And I was like, yeah, I would love to come in. And it was like, at that point, I felt like I was really open to what would eventually be what this is. But at the time, I didn't know what it was, right? I felt an energy. I did. That's all I could kind of go after, right? And I just knew at that point, going in and working with Mike, and at the time, it was just like a few questionable.
It wasn't everybody. It was just like certain people, certain days.
And like Colin, I got to know Colin, and I just knew that I loved going back, and I learned more, and it was fun. I think from that point, it wasn't like a moment, where it was like, oh my gosh, this could be it. It was just like, what's going on, and I like this, and the more and more creative that everybody else got, and it was infectious, and it was really, really fun, and that's what I love about being in a band, having been in a band for 20 years, it's like,
it's the fun
I love
that keeps
it, it's
you
the
coming back to
magic,
you.
it's that, and I was just like, all about it, and it was like, okay, this is what we're gonna do. Emily, so we're gonna start booking some shows. And I was like, okay.
That was a big,
cool.
that was actually a big moment. That was,
it was
very
more
slow.
so. I know.
It was very slow and like,
the moment you found out this was Linkin Park was when you're like, hey, our booking agent's on the phone. Do you want to do 6 arenas?
the context, just to lay the context.
That's exactly how it went.
To lay out the context, because I know that actually does sound crazy.
Crazy.
Super crazy. And we were, at that point, everything was still very organic and like amorphous. Like there wasn't a lot of shape to it.
Yeah.
I think you were under the impression that you might be like a featured artist, right? Like
there would be
I got the
few-
vibe that that'd
few
be like,
singers.
and we weren't even clear at that point if it was, am I gonna be carrying a bunch of vocals? Are we gonna have another vocalist? Are we gonna have multiple vocalists on stage? Like, I don't know we had all these options.
Yeah.
And then some real shows showed up on the radar. They had reached out to management. Those shows since had not happened. But it was just the impetus for hey, apparently people actually really want to see the band. You still have fans out there.
Yeah.
And
you still have fans out here.
believe it or not, there were moments in the last 7 years where I was not positive that was I wasn't convinced that there were a lot of fans out there for us in some whatever version. Do you know what I'm saying? I imagine that it could be a lot smaller.
that are still here, but we have what we need? Are we in the business of more Linkin Park?
Is it just a different thing now?
It's very understandable why you would ask yourself that question, because it brings up an enormous amount of imagery and thrash and things, and the what ifs, the what woulds.
We were all feeling the what ifs. There was a huge leap of faith that we had to say, like, I think she's the one. Like, I think she's...
Yep.
Well, there was a moment, Mike was working with Emily, and you've heard her voice, sounds
Crushing
amazing.
it. Yeah.
But there was a moment, was the first time Mike asked her to scream. And that for me, that did, I was like, okay, this is, let's have a conversation.
No, but your scream is super unique because you're screaming and I didn't even realize that you started screaming. It's the craziest thing. Like, there's a lot of dynamic shift when people choose to go from singing to screaming. That's very much by design. Sometimes I feel that yours is just like this, it's like a wave. It's like a very, it's like a crest of a wave. It's like I'm singing really pure and then all of a sudden I'm screaming, but it's like, I don't feel that's such a hot dynamic shift.
We even like soloed it, and like there were different takes, right? And we soloed the takes and we're listening through and we're like, it sounds like there's effects on the vocal.
That's what I mean.
It sounds like there's like a bit crusher or distortion on the vocal. There's nothing on it. It just sounds that way.
Yeah.
It's really unique. At that point, we were like,
by the way, get used to this, because the timeline is all over the show. So if you want quick and easy answers here, forget about it. What you're feeling is what I'm feeling. We're all feeling the same thing. Carry on.
we're in my studio.
Yeah.
We've been working on stuff off and on for weeks or months. And at a certain point, it's like we keep inviting Emily and Colin back. We keep that was good. Like, let's do it again. We did it again. That was good too. And it gets better and better and better. And we had some songs and we realized, I think we should, like, this isn't me speaking, this is everybody speaking. Like, I think she's the singer. Like, wow. Am I crazy? And the other guy's like, no, I feel that too.
As that was happening, like, we had a desire to like make things loud.
Yeah. The vocal felt right, and so that inspired more heavy songs, and the heavy songs brought that out more, and it was just back and forth.
What a beautiful, beautiful process to be able to allow yourself the space to come to a singular moment when you have to actually commit.
So we had to verbalize that.
Yeah.
And we said to her.
So that's the point when I was like, hey.
Holy shit. And by no means up to that point had you allowed any potential or any hopes or any other realities settle in.
I mean, there was a lot of feeling. There was a lot of, I definitely didn't want to go there, and be like, oh, I'm the singer, or I could be the singer, or it was just like, what is good for this band? As a fan, what would be the ideal voice or energy, or what is that fit? I took myself out of the equation. And I just looked at it as like, what could be a good fit?
Yeah.
And I held on to that question for a bit as I was going in and singing and stuff. Yeah. And then it would, there was, and that's when the thoughts would trickle, being like,
yeah.
I mean, this would be really fun. I mean, this could work. And then it's like, oh my God, holy shit. Like when you start to like have that moment, it's like, whoa.
Can I ask you a question? I know, and I really love you to take it in the intention in which it's meant, which is really, really genuine and honest. Does Chester enter your mind in moments like this? Do you think about when you're trying to sing these songs and do what's right for the band? Like, if so, how does he manifest in this, in your thoughts and your feelings?
Well, when I first listened to Linkin Park, like Hybrid Theory was like my favorite album. And I was starting bands at the time. I was in a band, and that was the moment where I was like, I want to sing and scream. One step closer, I was like, I could do that. And at the time I wasn't even a good singer. I was a guitar player in a band, and I just loved being in a band. And I was like, I could do that. So of course, it gets to this point and just being like, this is crazy, In that fact where it's like, I would have never imagined, so there's definitely that. And obviously in the side of like the feelings and the emotions of it, like I would love to do him proud,
As of this conversation, you've taken a different stage yesterday and presented, this is where the timeline gets even weirder, because we're a ways away from that. This is the arena setup. This conversation will happen the day after you've played your first show. And I've seen the set list, now everyone's heard it. You know, there's only one new song, I think, on the set list. So the first times you sang Chester's songs, because you really became a part of this band singing your songs. It's super unique. Not even probably thinking, because there isn't a Linkin Park, what would it sound like if I sang Paper Cuts?
It's the weirdest way to start a new band.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Like we were literally like writing a new album, writing new songs, figuring out the band at the same time. And then you add on to the kind of at some point, maybe not the end of it, but you add on later. Oh, and there's all this other great stuff that we love that we wrote, but Colin and I both have like a pretty good imagination for what something is going to sound like. Like that's when we're working on a thing, right? It's like, oh, this part could use a sound like this. It's in our head. We know what it is, and then we have to make it. Similarly, I could hear her sing, and I go, I know what she's gonna sound like on Crawling. I think I know what she's gonna sound like on Faint. Like, and then we started doing it. You remember we sat and, was it just like a acoustic?
You mean in your studio?
Yeah.
Oh wait, no, you've got on your piano.
Piano?
That's right.
Because we were changing the keys
Yeah.
to get into your range.
And then I was do this to scream to cover
She was
my
screaming
scream.
into like a pillow or into her shirt so that it wasn't so loud.
Because it was so quiet, but I was like, I think I could do
sitting
it.
this far apart. Yeah.
It sounds great. No, this is good.
I mean, to some degree, I can imagine, and I mean this well, as a little anticlimactic, because you waited your whole life to probably sing those songs and really let it go as a fan, not under the circumstances that they're in, probably with Chester. Probably one day to get on stage with Chester at a festival and do it with him, right? So that moment when you actually get to like really sing that song, what did that feel like? When you got to sing a Linkin Park song that Chester sang and that inspired you to be a singer in the first place?
Colin and I, like, we had to like go in and like, we spent a lot of time together and like going through the songs and really trying to make them our own, you know? That was a process of like, especially the older songs that are just embedded, you know? And it's never a thought where it's like, I need to make the song my own, right? So there's a lot of deconstruction in that way, where it's like, how do I make this song have the same impact as much as possible with my voice? So I had to find the meaning in the song again, in a different way. And that was fun and challenging. Some of the songs came way quicker than others. But I definitely noticed that, like the newer songs, like Lost, like that was like so easy for me. And I thought it would be like, we went through it like a few times and I just like had it. And the other ones, for some reason, even though I've listened to them so many times.
Well, maybe you're just subconsciously still connected to them as a fan.
Exactly.
It's really hard to figure out how you can actually bring them to life, to your point.
Exactly.
You know, keep them authentic, but also be you.
Yes.
Because you got to do two authentics here.
Yes.
You got to do right by the song, but you got to do right by you. Otherwise, everyone's going to be like,
That's
"Well, this is just a barroom singer getting up and having a go."
Exactly.
I don't know if I said this to anyone out loud. I really felt like when I met you in person, like you walked into the room at East West, I felt like that was the clearest spark where I was like, oh yeah, I get it. Like, this is right. Even before really hearing you on anything and really thinking about it, just like when you walked into the room, your energy, I was like, that's spectacular. Like, that feels right. And then I think your voice, the way you interpret things, like, it's all just like cohesive to me in terms of who you are, and it's, you said authentic. And I think like the greatest opportunity for Emily is just to be Emily. Like, and Emily's energy makes sense with Linkin Park. Like, it's the exact right feeling, because like there were even experiments that I had heard with like amazing singers that had come in and worked on stuff, some of whom I really like loved their voices. And when I heard it, I was like, that sounds cool. It doesn't sound like this band. And everything I've seen you like bring to the table feels naturally like this band.
Yeah.
And even to your questions about Chester, like Chester's one of a kind. Like Chester did his thing like no one else could do it. And I think like what's amazing is like Emily just being Emily works in Linkin Park.
Can I give you the perspective from a fan when I press play on the album? Damn, I shouldn't have let that out. I'm gonna get bombarded now. Way too late. When I press play on the album,
Who gave you the album?
I can talk about Emptiness Machine.
Yes.
Right.
You can.
And in relation to the album, it was the first thing I heard. And it was, I'm walking so carefully here. It was, it blew me away because obviously you introduce, people who heard it live now, you know, you start the song and you lay out the stall. And it's like, you know me. You think you know me, this is what the song's about, but you don't actually know me, but you know what I sound like. So let me just explain to you what the relationship actually is. And then when you start singing for the first time, I get goosebumps thinking about it because it sounded so much like the band. And it didn't sound like Chester, but it didn't sound unlike Chester's spirit, if that makes sense. You know?
So it was such a tricky, for my ear, I've got, I don't know, audio baggage. Like there's a lot when I'm processing things in general, I'm thinking a lot. When I'm processing our music, I'm thinking more. And like Brad said, we did a lot of sessions with a lot of people. They weren't tryouts, they were just sessions. And certainly when I started to hear Emily's voice on things, my brain, it was like the first time that my brain would accept it as a Linkin Park song. You know what I mean? Like when it was just my voice on the song, I could accept it. But we put other people in the songs, having Emily's voice on it over and over again, it went, yeah, that feels good. Yeah, that feels good. And I'm glad that you had that feeling because I think Emptiness Machine, I think a lot of us, when we arranged it the way it's currently arranged, like when we got to that version of the song, it was pretty obvious to us that it was a good thing to lead with.
Well, it also feels like it's a very important closing of the loop from some of the feelings you were all going through 7 years ago and that you so eloquently put on, as we mentioned before, Place to Start, which is the idea of wanting to find a place to start and wanting a place to belong. And really what this is about is finding that place to belong again, right? That reason to want to hang out again, to want to create again, to have the fun again, to do it again. That's how the song ends. It begins as a throwdown. Very clear throwdown. And I'm not going to say that it's a challenge to anyone or any group of people specifically, but to me it's very clear that there's a big distance between what people think and what you want to do. I don't want to be dragged down by expectation. And so it's hard not to make a connection to some degree between what we've talked about a little bit so far, which is this idea of how things are going to be received and getting ahead of it a little bit. I don't know if that was conscious or subconscious, but I definitely heard the gauntlet being thrown down that I'm not going to sit around and be judged anymore.
That's an interesting take on it. I don't think that's exactly what I meant, but I mean, you know, the listener's perception of the lyrics is always their own and yours are valid.
However it came out of your subconscious, it feels like it's a very clean break. You talked about the catharsis having already happened, and that makes total sense. 7 years is time. But there's still some catharsis out there for people who are going to try to figure out, okay, I love this band. What is Linkin Park in 2024 with Colin and Emily and new music? Not just shows, we're not just doing festivals, I'll decide in a park somewhere. No. We got to see this last night and we got to hear a new song and there's a new album. Can we get the album artwork up actually on the screen? This is a cool trick. There it is.
There we go.
That's why we wanted to do it.
You got the power.
That's cool, right? Yeah, that's really cool.
That's sick.
Yeah.
It's not CGI. It's a photo.
So did you put in between the glass?
It is
Right?
yeah, I don't know. I'm not technical enough with photography.
It looks like they would have had to have put the liquid in between two sheets of glass or something to create that spread.
That's not how it was made.
Thank you for clearing that up.
It's because it's natural, like liquids and colors and photography. You can't make it again. This is just a moment in time, right? It feels simultaneously like really small, like microscopic, and also galactic, like very big. I think our band is big and small at the same time.
To me, it screams possibility, which encapsulates what Mike is saying. It sums up the from zero concept, and it's kind of like, okay, it looks cool, but it's like, where do we go from here?
Yeah, it's an organism, and you want to see where it goes, right? You want to see what it builds from. We're all seeing this now, in case you hadn't seen it, and we're meeting new people, and we've got Linkin Park back in our lives. Let's talk to the fans. I would just love to know what you would like the fans to know from a relationship point of view, because this is a relationship that you've built over a long period of time. And those relationships are what keep everybody in what we love. You get to do what you love, we get to love it.
I've been thinking about that a lot. I've been thinking about the process that we've gone through, the steps that we've come to get here. We've talked about it in the past that anytime you release a new album, you're kind of popping up in a new location, and then the fans have to try to catch up.
Yeah.
So we might have gone on a 2-year journey, or in this case, a 7-year journey, or whatever that is. And then for us, we've walked that whole path. And so for us, it feels, this is where we're at, and it makes sense to us, and this is why. But to somebody else, you've disappeared, been underground for forever, and then now here you are. So there's a big amount of life that's been lived on our end and on the fans' base's end. And I think in the process of all that, I am so excited to share this whole thing with them again. As a musician, my favorite thing is that interaction and that connection with your audience. I love this connection first and foremost, but then I love to go share it. But I also have permission for our fan base to form their own opinion. It's okay for them to land wherever they land on it. Obviously, I would speak for all of us, we want them to be in the journey where it's an open arms event where we're like, hell yeah, come on in, because we're having a great time and this is an awesome place to be. But respectfully, I know it's a lot. I know a lot's gone down. I know there's a lot of feelings and everything. Different people process that differently. Even amongst the 6 of us, we've processed things differently. I want to give space and respect to that, and just have an open invite.
That was so beautifully said, I have to say, honestly, as a fan. I really feel that. I think we have a right to listen and like whatever we want. And I think we'd love to be able to control that. All musicians and art would love our art to be heard and perceived the way that we intend it. That is the risk. It's the risk when you dedicate your life to it. On day one as a kid, not enough emphasis is placed on, and understandably so, because there are people putting their lives at risk to do things to make the world better genuinely.
Sure.
But I do put art and magic as magic up there. It can save people's lives. It can make life better. It can mend and heal and create real experience.
Absolutely.
And when you commit yourself at a young age to do that, and you step out of the framework and you back yourself, that is a form of courage, whether anyone wants to call it that or not. And that is what's going on here. It is a courageous step you've all taken to continue and to make music and to reconnect.
You're gonna make me cry. Stop, you guys.
So nice.
You're gonna make me cry.
And I feel like there's a million different ways people can do that. One of them is to kind of put on a front of I don't give a fuck what anybody thinks, this is my thing, whatever. You can do that, and people take that space, and that's sincerely, or whatever their path is, if that's what it is, that it is what it is. But there's also a space where you can say, and this is kind of what I feel like I'm coming from, and I think all of us, that sincerely, we believe in this, we love it, and we hope you do too. And if you don't, I don't think music's competitive. I think of it as like food. If I love mustard and geek out on it, and then you don't love mustard, we can still be friends. It's not a contest.
There's a guy who sold 100 million albums. Pretty easy to fucking not be competitive when you're on top, baby.
That part's competitive. But the actual
He actually
art is
wasn't
not.
doing a metaphor or an analogy. This dude won't stop talking about mustard. And
So
it's so
this
annoying.
is a great pivot point where
And I
mustard?
really
Can
just
I-
don't
can I-
relate.
can I
don't
sell you
relate
some
to
mustard,
him.
Zane?
I don't relate to his mustard collection.
Let's just block him out because I'm a mustard fan.
When he was talking about, we hung out for 6 hours and we didn't make anything, isn't that cool? This is what he's talking about.
Yeah, basically, it's just him going,
This is what we made. What we
Can
made
we go to work?
is this.
Can we go
It
to work?
sounds really prophetic when you're we sat there for 6 hours, we didn't make anything. These dudes were literally talking about mustard.
Yeah, but that's where it started. Maybe not mustard, but that's where it started.
And you're right. You made a really important point very early on. Joe, you made the point that when it got very big, it's easy sometimes for that to just get overwhelmed or overshadowed by the day-to-day experience of just keeping going. Just keep going.
I mean, you didn't see it on the screen, but that's for the same reason that you're talking about, is why the album cover was almost yellow.
Back to Mustard. I tried.
And also From Zero sounded better than Almost Yellow.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any coming back from this.
So I mean, I think I've got, you know what?
You know everybody well enough at this point to know.
It goes off.
It stays
There's no
there.
coming back.
It's not coming back.
It doesn't go in reverse. There's no reverse
I'm
here.
just grateful I got like some real emotion, some genuine answers out of here, especially out of this guy right here.
You're lucky this didn't happen an hour ago.
That's what I'm saying. I feel like I just need to like take what I got.
If you want the pivot back to
restart.
sincerity, I think that
Can you even
I
pivot
can
back to
pivot.
sincerity?
Brad can do it.
if you have like 3 mustards,
Yes. This is the Linkin Park I met on day one. I'm not even kidding.
I still remember the first time we met you at BBC at the studios in London.
XFM.
And you early on from the jump stood out to me as somebody who not only was like fun to talk to, but was sincerely invested in, even if I thought you may have started some gnarly rumors about us.
I swear it wasn't me, man.
I still loved you.
I love you too.
And so as a full circle moment,
Yeah, it's cool, right?
every time I feel like we hang out, it's a bit of a full circle moment because there's like a new thing happening. But this is great.
It's cool, man.
And it's
cool.
really great to see you and be with you.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting us to be here. You know, I'm glad we ended on Mustard because that's kind of how it started. I remember you went there and you went there. You guys were fans. I remember you walked into the building and I saw you walking down the corridor toward me, and the way the studio was set up is I could see the guests walking all the way from the lift at the other end of the floor all the way down. So you could tell if someone was in a good mood or in a bad mood, what their energy was like. Are they in rock star mode? Are they happy with their team? If they come off of a bad interview, I got real good at reading the room pretty quick because you had 15 seconds to figure out what was going on.
Wow.
And I remember you turned the corner looking like the most American band I've ever seen in my life. It was just DC shoes.
Just
And
Calabasas.
just baggy. It was just straight Calabasas. But it was, everyone had a different hair color and it was brilliant. And I remember how you were all laughing in equal measure at each other. You were all like just, it was like, oh, these guys are so stoked. They're in London for the first time as a band. They're about to play King's College. The song's on radio, and you seemed so happy. And I knew your story. I knew Chester was a latecomer to the band. My eyes were like, okay, is he comfortable? Are they comfortable together? Not unlike how it was today. And yeah, it was really comfortable then, and it's really comfortable now, and you're still taking the piss, and I love it. I'm glad you got back to that, right? I'm glad you got back to that. We'll talk around the album, because I have so much to talk about on this album and I can't say nothing. Because you guys hold the keys to the kingdom.